Hey, welcome everybody to Radiant Reflections, Season 5, Episode 9. We hope you're enjoying this trek through The Familiar Stranger by Tyler Statton. I've enjoyed reading this book now a second time, or third time, maybe. I'm not sure. And the podcasts that are associated with this book, tell you to check those out as well. There's a whole series of podcasts that Tyler did.
Yeah.
Just a great book. And this is in conjunction with our series, In Pursuit of the Spirit here at Radiant Life Church, our teaching pastors. This last Sunday, from the time we're recording this, Pastor Ryan Bibb shared about the 3 baptisms of the Spirit and the theology behind what it means to be continually filled by the Spirit. It's been an amazing trek and journey. Super excited about what the Lord's doing here at Radiant Life Church with the gifts of the Spirit. And we're doing this like book club style, just page by page. So if you're listening along, grab your copy of the book. If you're watching, we're sorry. Lutz and I have the face for radio. Cheyenne would not agree with me on that.
I don't know. Depends on the day.
Depends on the day.
Yeah.
The ones that end in Y.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, we are jumping in on page 95, and now we are getting to the stuff.
Finally getting to the stuff.
We're getting to the stuff, to the gifts of the Spirit. And this first one in chapter 7 on page 95 is discernment. And I had kind of started in this. You know, I like to go slow. I like to ask questions. How does discernment work in your life? This gift. Talk about your own experience with discernment, Lutz. How does it feel? What does it look like? How do you go through it?
Well, I had to start in the practice early in life, and actually the timing of all this is amazing because I sat with my dad for a while this last weekend, and
Your dad is a pastor?
My dad is a pastor. Oh yeah, a little context. My dad is a pastor.
Yep.
When he was starting in ministry, I should say, started at a Nazarene church, Holiness Movement church, and then stayed in that vein for most of ministry.
Okay.
But there was a decision, a discernment process that he brought to us as a family that my mom and my sister and dad and I all sat in together. And so we walked through this discernment process, and it was all, it was leaving the church we were at and going to another church. And was this where God was calling and where he was leading? And so my view is kind of a unique thing, I think, in a beautiful way, because I got to experience that as a kid of, okay, we're going to fast. And it wasn't a long period of time, but we're going to fast for a short amount of time. We're going to spend time in prayer. We're going to spend time journaling. I was a terrible journaler. I still am, because I can't read my writing. So I do it less often than I should. But writing it down and then spending time out in nature quietly. Like, what is God saying? Where do I feel comfort, or where do I feel that peace? And where do I feel like maybe there's some stretching or some uncomfortability? And is that me, or is that God? And so it was really cool to go through that process. And I was young. I was 12 or 13. I'm walking through that process for the first time. And what it did is it taught me, I mean, this was a big deal. This was moving, a few hours away, 5-6 hours away.
Oh, wow.
Big thing.
Big life
uprooting
change.
yourself. Yeah, we'd been in the area for most of our lives. And so moving away from family, all that sort of stuff. But I watched it happen in that moment. And then I began to notice throughout the next years of life, I would notice my dad would often be involved in that act of fasting and these other disciplines. And I began to ask him sometime, like, why are you doing that? And he's like, well, I'm connecting with the Spirit more. And a lot of times it was for discernment, not on the big, massive life decisions like that, or, moving or new job or stuff like that. Yeah. But even on the smaller things of like, Lord, where do you want me to do this today? Or what you've been moving in this direction. Why is that? And so I began to see a little glimpses of those. And so what I've tried to do is try to apply those in my life as well. Okay. It's an area where I still have so much to grow in. I just feel like I can grow so deeply in that, because I second guess myself. If I'm just completely vulnerable, just honest, I can second guess myself. Is that the right decision? And it begins to get in here about, am I making the right decision? Not, am I actually listening to the Spirit of God? And it flips. And I think that's the flesh that's still trying to grab onto that and say, but here's all the things that could go wrong if you really trust that this is God? What if it's not? And all the things we can do to ourselves internally.
Yeah.
So I really try to practice discernment every morning. That's my time when I spend with the Lord, and try to slow everything else down, and just ask for that. Lord, I'm asking for your words today. Now, some of those are more immediate in the moment of, Lord, something's happening. I need some wisdom in this.
You need
some
direction, like on a particular circumstance? Is that what you're saying?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay.
So sometimes that discernment is literally just, Lord, help me to hear your voice louder than the voices of the world. And that's my morning. To know the difference. Yep. That's the morning prayer. So I guess I should clarify that a little better. So clarity in hearing the Lord's voice versus the crowdedness and the chaos of the other voices that are going to be there no matter what. And that's that prayer. And then of course, when there are larger decisions in life or things like that come up, that's a practice that is constant. But again, it's that going back to the well, going back to that time with Jesus, and knowing that if I know what his voice sounds like, then I don't have to focus on any other voices. I can just focus on his.
That's good. That's good. So you're asking to know the difference throughout the day, and then you're asking to know the will of God in particular situations and circumstances.
Yeah.
When you're involved in discernment, when do you take that beyond your own quiet time to another arena, or I guess invite others into that? What is that? How does that look for you?
Well, for a while I was a pastor. I was a lead pastor, and we had a church board, and we did group discernment, and we started I started to walk this church board through what does this look like to discern as a leadership discerning community, an LDC. How do we do this in group? And of course, it has to begin with the self and in the soul. And so we walked through a lot of moments or decisions through the discerning process instead of just coming together for the church body. Okay. Yep. Making the decision, no, let's come together and let's spend time in discernment. What's the Lord saying? And so bringing that into that group size. I've also spent some time in some discernment practices, and we'll get a little bit into what that looks like here with Tyler. One-on-one, I've got a really good friend of mine that's is also a pastor, ironically enough, but he and I are very, very closely connected. And so when we're hitting those areas in life, it's not a great rhythm we have now, but we used to be every other week or so we'd meet and connect, but it was, where's the Spirit moving? Like what's God been saying? What's he been doing? And it was more of this almost bounce off and back and mirror. This is what I'm hearing you say. It's like, oh, I wonder if that's where the Lord's moving. And so not a spiritual direction, not quite to that level, but a
spiritual companion.
A spiritual companion. Yeah, it's a great way to put that. Hey, this is where I feel like the Lord's moving. This is what I feel like he's saying. And it would give you someone else to bounce that back. And I've found that's someone who can seep through the fleshiness of Ryan and see like maybe that's actually yourself speaking that. Maybe that's something that's coming out of your need.
That person has to be honest with you.
Oh yeah. And that's what the relationship's deep. It's a very deep and long-seated relationship because it has to be.
Yeah.
It can't be surface level. It was someone who can have the power and the right to speak into something. Say, no, I think you might be off base here. Or to say, yeah, I think that is the Lord, but I think you need to go a step further with that as well. And follow what he's saying. So
that's good. It makes me think of Proverbs, that there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors. So as you're seeking out counsel, that's really what you're looking for. You're looking for discernment.
Yeah.
You're looking for this counselor to say, this is what I think is right. This is what I think is wrong. This is what I think you should do. This is what I think you shouldn't do, which you've wisely said is very different than spiritual direction. Spiritual direction nobody tells you what to do. There's no directing, even though it's called that.
Yeah, just strange. How about you? You're working discernment.
Discernment for me, I come back a lot of times to the words of Paul, let the peace of God rule and reign in your heart. So can I sense, and you used in the last episode when we were talking about discerning prophecy as shared in the church gathering, you used a word called desolation. And this comes from Ignatius of Loyola, a desert father who created what we understand to be historically the spiritual exercises of consolation and desolation. I'm actually going through the 18th annotation of the Ignatian practices right now.
Okay, for you to pull that out of nowhere was incredible, so I'm glad you...
Oh, well, no, it's just part of my classwork right now. That's really the only reason that it's present. I've read spiritual exercises before, but what I've come to learn about the Ignatian way of doing things is it's not a book that you read. It's a thing that you do.
Yeah.
The exercises aren't things that you learn. It is a process. And the entirety of Ignatian spirituality is discernment. Mm-hmm. That's the entirety of it. Whether you go through all the exercises, you do the 19th annotation or the 18th annotation, whatever it is, it's literally discernment. Mm-hmm. It's literally knowing where and how and what ways God is leading you. So for me, that peace is a huge thing. Asking God to remove peace, and which we would understand to be desolation. Mm-hmm. Or to enjoy the peace of God, which can be consolation. The difference is a lot of times, and I've seen this pattern among people who don't know about Ignatian practices as much, they'll use consolation and desolation synonymously with emotions and feelings.
Right.
And they're not. True Ignatian understanding of desolation and consolation is actually the movement of God in you. Mm-hmm. It isn't how we feel. Because we can feel desolation when the Spirit is actually presenting consolation. Mm-hmm. We can be opposed to the movement of the Spirit. So for me, it's so much about the peace. You've been in these scenarios, you're in a metropolitan area, you're on a darkly lit street, and all of a sudden you get a feeling like, whoa, the hair on my neck is standing up, and you look around, and sure enough, maybe there's a potential danger over in this dark alley or whatever. And you lose that peace in that moment. And that's God coming to you. That's God saying to you, I am warning you through the way that you feel right now about something that could harm you. And so I look for that peace. And when I don't have that peace, I start asking questions, is it peace? Have I lost peace because I'm like Cain right now? My face is crestfallen because I'm in sin. Because that causes me to lose peace too. Or is it literally God is removing peace as a way to be a steering wheel for me, to show me, whoop, go this way, no peace over here. That doesn't even always mean that I'm going to feel good. I don't think the peace of God means that I feel good always. The peace of God transcends. It is also in our emotions and feelings, but it transcends that. It's beyond that. So discernment for me is much about that. It's much about discerning, that's terrible, it's very circular, discerning the peace of God's presence in my life or not. That's sort of the dash light for me. And also discernment in group setting. I'm one who will go to a lot of people, old people, young people. I mean, the person I talk with more than anyone is my wife. Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk to my wife. She knows me better than anyone.
Yeah.
She can read through my smoke, I like to say, and say, hey, no, that's not really what's happening in this situation. And then there's elders in the faith. There's men and women of God that have walked with Jesus, longer than I've been alive, that I'm going to go to them for discernment. And it becomes a trusting process to say, God, I'm coming to this person and I'm believing you're coming to me through them, through their experience, through the things that they've learned in life. They're trusted, right? So counsel, a multitude of counselors is a big part of my practices as well. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's jump in. Let's see what Tyler says. There's our own experiences. Take it or leave it. However, that might be helpful to you or not. 95. He's talking about John Mark and leaving Manhattan.
Yeah.
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, where you planted.
Yeah. Leaving Brooklyn and going clear over to the crunchy town, Portland. What a thing that was. 95, 96, and 97. I'm just going to put all those together. Do you have anything sticking out? I did not have anything highlighted.
Okay, so I just highlighted the last bit. Again, I love the way he opens with these stories, but last paragraph in that section, to make a long story short, every one of those prayers I had written was answered within the first 24 hours of our time in Portland. Yeah. God knocked me on my back, and I can honestly say that in the year following the decision to move, I experienced the constant sense of God's goodness and blessing like never before. That's a massive decision in life, obviously.
Oh, man.
Do we leave
coast.
where we
You're moving coast, yeah.
Yeah, we're going. I mean, you're uprooting. I don't even know if you had kids at this point, but you're uprooting your family, whatever that looks like, and moving. I mean, that's your livelihood now. You're switching everything. The fact that he worked, I've not done that, before. I've had moves before, and we'll get into that later, where I've asked God these things, but he had this ironed out, and he went on this prayer walk with God, and I love that he ironed that out and said, okay, these are the things that, almost like Gideon laying the fleece out. Like, Lord,
I was hoping you were going to go there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm laying the fleece out, Lord. If it's you.
Explain that a little bit more for listeners or viewers about what Tyler did when you're talking about fleeces. Talk about that. What is that? So
the Gideon, let me share that just real briefly. Gideon was a judge, and it was someone that God was speaking to lead this army against this army that was Israel's army. He was going to lead Israel's army against this army that far outnumbered them. And Gideon's like, this doesn't make any sense.
Get the butts kicked.
I'm gonna lay my fleece out here on the ground, Lord. If it's you, make the fleece wet and let the ground be dry from the dew in the morning. And he wakes up, the fleece is absolutely soaking wet, the ground is dry, and he's like, oh, it must be, but I'm gonna do it again just to double check, because I don't know. So I'm gonna lay the fleece
twice
out.
Cut once.
That's right. I don't want to be wrong. I'm gonna lay it out, Lord. This time, let the ground be wet and let my fleece be dry. And he comes out in the morning, and the ground's soaking wet, and the fleece just completely dry. And he's okay. Now I actually trust in you. And so the idea was, I'm making sure this is you, God. And so I use that just to explain kind of what Tyler was saying. Like, Lord, I feel you might be moving in this area.
Calling us to Portland.
So yeah, if you're calling us, here are the things that show me it's you through these things. Come true in the. It's an act of a prayer. Make sure that they pray. And that was one other thing was his wife.
Language that he was using in prayer.
Yes.
His wife used the exact language in their conversations.
Right, which he'd never spoken to her of at all.
Yeah.
And so this has to be the Lord speaking, not a coincidence.
Yeah.
It must be a coincidence. No, we play that off. If we'd asked God to fulfill this, and then he does, okay, clearly he's moving. And so Tyler was doing that in that moment, saying, okay, God, if this is you speaking, and then he did, and he came through. And that's powerful. That's hard to say, this must not be God. Like, no, it absolutely is God.
Yeah.
Absolutely is God.
And it feels like in the discernment process, we do need to sort of, in faith, put some of those things out there in order to know that we know that we know. Like, this is God or this isn't. Yep. Right? Because I don't know, you are a very charming and charismatic person. You are.
Well, thank you.
No, you really are. You really are. We're similar in that way. We can be charming, right? And be charismatic. And you'll can admit to this. We can get our way if we want in some instances, right?
Don't ask my wife, but yeah.
We can twist, we can manipulate, right? We can sort of polish things to make things give us the results that we want. We need to have, at least my personality, I need to have that part of the equation removed. Yep. I need that piece of my flesh to be removed and for God to be God. And it's like, okay, Josh didn't have any grip on this thing. It was the Lord and the Lord alone. And that is a great way to discern when you put those fleeces out and you ask God to do something that only he can do. When he's doing something that only he can do, now you're humbled. Now you're on the back seat and you're actually following him and you're actually hearing from him and you actually have the direction that you're supposed to go. And, now we know that's what happened with Tyler. He tenured his resignation at the church that he planted, left friends, and it was a whole thing. I mean, you recently, you didn't move from Brooklyn to Portland, but you left a lead pastoral position by your choice at a church, and you came to be the next gen pastor here. Man, I'm sure that was a process too.
Yeah.
That was a thing.
Yeah, it was. And it
like Tyler.
Just like Tyler.
Yes.
There was a lot of prayer and discernment involved in that decision. And quite honestly, there was a lot of that, Lord, if this is you, it's got to be all you. Because this is a decision, and just I'm going to bear my heart here. It's a decision that, man, it looks like a failure. You leave a church and, anything that can happen after that, or you left this position. And in the church world, sometimes we put a ladder up just like we do in the corporate world, like you took a step down, which it's not. There's still a calling no matter what. And so all those fleshy things at play, it's like, Lord, if this is you, it's gotta absolutely be you. And so my wife and I spent a lot of time in prayer and dealt with some of the pain and some of the I don't want to call it suffering, but some of the things that come along with that when you switch church bodies like that and families in a similar community. Can be heavy, can be difficult to do that. But I will tell you what, when Tyler laid those things before the Lord as a fleece, he had to be certain, because if it's you're going to get tested. And when you get in that new spot, there's going to be things that come, and it's like,
make you question.
And if you're not 100% certain that this is the Lord's will where he wants you,
waver.
It's easy. Yeah, it's easy to step off or say, maybe this was wrong, or I'll go a different direction.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's part of the reason. And I even think back to Gideon, like he needed to know for certain.
Yeah.
He's leading 300 men against
people's lives.
Hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah, it's not a small thing.
Yeah, these people are going in with warfare. Like some of them could die.
Yeah.
Because of the choices you're making,
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a whole other thought. Who else? I'm going completely ADHD here on this comment.
It's all right.
Who else? Drop in the comments. If you're going to be president of the United States of America, you should have served in active duty. You should not have the authority and the privilege, I won't even call it a privilege, but the authority to send sons and daughters of our country into harm, into warfare, where they're going to be fired upon, or maybe they have to be fired upon, unless you've lived it yourself. It's my opinion.
There's a lot of, I'm going to let that one, there's a lot of responsibility on that, but it proves something. You've got to be in the heat of that battle decision.
You have weighed it.
Absolutely. To have experience to rely upon, because there's a lot of gravity. You have a lot of people at your disposal, and there are lives at stake here.
And that's what Gideon was.
Absolutely.
Gideon was a man of war and a judge of Israel, like you said. And God proved himself in a big way in that story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything, 97, anything else?
He told a second story, which I like, Zach and Lindsay. So I do appreciate this. He didn't just show you go and you fulfill where God's moving and everything's butterfly and rainbows.
Yes.
Which I'll admit can also happen. God knocked them on their backs. This Zach and Lindsay, this other couple who had a similar story, felt God leading, knocked them on their backs with this clear voice, and they followed in radical obedience. And what followed was not a season of blessing, but of suffering. And I think it's important that we take a look at that. Just because we're following God's pull on our life or God's call that he's placed in us doesn't mean it's going to be easy. In fact, I'll be honest, listeners, far often it's not. It's far easier to do our own thing than it is to just follow along where God's leading us. There's far more peace when we're following where God wants us. In fact, you won't find peace if we're not following where he wants us to be. But it's a lot easier to do what we want than it is to obey and to commit to follow him when he's leading. And that is a really difficult thing, because sometimes we can make that decision. I'm doing this thing that I think God wants me to do, but it's really hard, or it's impossible, or it's difficult, or whatever, or there's harm or a sickness or whatever this might be. And we can interpret those spiritually and say, this must not be what God wanted because it's hard. Yeah. And we can throw the towel in, as it were, and walk away. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes you wonder if God isn't taking you through that process just for that reason. Like he already knows that thing that you thought he was telling you to do isn't going to work out. But there were things that he was trying to teach you and that you needed to learn. You had to go through that thing to get what you have now.
Yeah.
And when you're in the midst of that thing, that doesn't feel very good. But in hindsight, you can see the wisdom and providence of God. It's like, oh, yeah, I learned stuff there that I couldn't have learned. I could read a book or whatever. Yeah. Go to take a class or something, seminary. But when you're knee deep in it, it's like, okay, I get it. How about 98? I have like half the book after this.
Go ahead. You start.
the bottom of 98, into 99. How are you supposed to keep on trusting a God who whispers with a smile when he's leading you into an ambush? Or scariest of all possibilities, was it not God speaking and leading them at all? Were they mistaken about God's voice and direction? This is Zach's story. If they got this wrong, how could they know for sure if it had ever been God's voice they were hearing? To hear and live by God's voice, it would seem, is one of the most potent and most dangerous aspects of Christian spirituality. Nothing matters more than learning to discern the voice of God. And yet few things in life are more susceptible to pain, abuse, delusion, and deception. Who among us hasn't cried out to God, and God seemingly says nothing back in the waiting? Who among us hasn't been hurt by the misuse of God's word by an authority figure? And who among us hasn't been enlivened by the still small whisper of God's voice we learn increasingly as we follow the Good Shepherd? Who among us hasn't known the blessing of the first story? And who among us hasn't endured the pain, confusion, even abandonment of the second? I have here in this space here the question stories. Now, you just shared one. Do you have a story that you could share with listeners or viewers where it didn't work out the way that you thought? Maybe it is the previous story in a different light. I don't know. I don't want to put any thoughts in your head, but maybe like Zach. Do you have a Zach story?
Yeah, actually. And it's funny that you put it that way. So there was, and when we were actually looking to move out of a previous church, and they all deal with churches right now. It's my thought process, but we were feeling God's pull, God's leading. He was really building this gift of teaching within me and really multiplying this. And this avenue to take it, I was a children's pastor. My whole degree, my whole field of study had been children's ministry for a decade at this point. And God was pulling me into this teaching role. And so I'm trying to figure out what that looks like. And there was this church that was opening up, and they'd called a couple times, and I want to say, just for context for the story, at this point in my ministry, I had been called by a lot of different churches for a lot of positions and things, and none of them felt like the Spirit of God was leading. Like none of them. And it was after one conversation, it was clear, just like a light bulb. Like
you knew.
Yeah, absolutely. There's this desolation. There was no peace when I thought about it. There were some of those fun things or exciting, but it was not. Right. It was not where the Lord was really leading. And so, this one was the only one that continued to have that pulling of the Spirit maybe leading us there. And so we spent a lot of time in prayer, spent time, we came and interviewed, we did a lot of things of that, and realized this is where God was leading us. And then when we made that step, there was a lot of illness in our family. I mean, immediately the move itself, we lost about a third of our belongings in the move. We moved during a monsoon, so like massive storm that came through and destroyed a third of our stuff in the move. My truck actually broke down while I'm pulling the trailer with our stuff in the middle of this storm. The house that we were moving to wasn't ready yet, so we lived in a trailer for a while. Sure. Then we moved into a bedroom, one bedroom of a house. We had a 2-year-old at this point, just our boy was really young, and a dog. And so, I mean, it was everything immediately just the pressure was immense. The sale of our house was coming into issues, like so many things at once. And quite honestly, those questions in that paragraph on the page previous, was this really God's voice? Did we do it, but we did something wrong? Are we making these wrong steps, or is this a strengthening of our faith? Am I being punished? Am I being punished? Yeah. Is this my doing? And all of those things happened before I even really started the job. Wow. All this stuff had happened just in that like 2-3 week period there. And so a lot of that pressure things. Now out the other side came a beautiful ministry that God has multiplied and done some really great things through. But that time of questioning, God, are you really here? Are you really moving in this? And
was he though?
See.
No, I'm asking you, how did it turn out?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. He was. Okay. And here's how I know that for like 100% certain without any questions. God has produced so much fruit on the backside, but it has also led us here. Because if we hadn't taken that first step of faith, I know that we wouldn't be here. Oh, sure. We wouldn't be at Radiant Life. We wouldn't be part of this community. Yeah. But God has multiplied what he's done in our lives. And looking back, which I will definitely say is a key to that, because in the moment, asking those questions, when I'm looking back now, I can see God's providential hand moving us. Storms are going to happen. We live in a world with sin. Storms happen. Yeah. Physical storms happen. The fact that we were moving it during that, was that a great decision? Maybe not. Could we have waited a day? Sure. But we wanted to get stuff done. There were other aspects that really I hadn't looked at because I was in the middle of it, and it's hard to see it when you're rolling through it.
Do the best you can.
And so, absolutely. So looking from the outside, it's cool to watch how God has woven together some of those pieces and using some of those issues to connect us to people that we would not have connected to had we not gone through those moments. And so So God's used it, and he was speaking in that. Now, again, there are a lot of pieces to that aren't on the podcast worthy, but some of those things that God has woven into, and it's gotten us to where we're at, and God's still using it. So,
and we are thankful for that.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah, I know in my life, the church, I only have 2 churches I've been to my whole life, like all 46 years, literally.
Wow, you're old.
Yes, I know. I'm old. Grandfather old.
That's right.
But the previous church, when I came to Christ, I knew that I was called into ministry. And I started working in business, and I started working at the church, just going to Bible college and that kind of thing. And, some years passed and I was ordained, and I was serving as a worship pastor. And it was the spoken and unspoken understanding in this congregation. It was a large congregation that became very small. Another conversation. That when our pastor retired or passed away, that I would be the pastor of the church, that I was the transition person, right? Mm-hmm. So much so, like my wife and I, we lived in town in LaGrange. We actually bought property and a house just a few miles from the church to be closer to the church building, because we knew it's like, okay, there's this trajectory and this future that we see that was just understood. And it was also, we talked about it even in elders meetings, like, okay, is this, God forbid, kind of like a will kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like this is what's going to happen. Not that a pastor can will a church, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get
there was an understanding. And fast forward, after a number of years, the church just kind of continued to go doctrinally and theologically sideways. And it became apparent, even 2 to 3 years before we left the church, that God was calling us out of the place that I felt he'd spoke to me. I bought a house. Like we moved our family there. We'd invest. I married my wife there. I went through Bible college there. I was baptized there. That was where I was baptized. All my children were dedicated there, all of them. Deeply rooted family ties. And fast forward, and things had changed. And what I thought I had heard from God, it wasn't what happened. And there was that, I love what you talked about. There, for me and for my wife and my children, there was a process of grief. There was a healthy, and there still is at times. We still, there's few days that go by that I don't remember serving at that church, or some of the people that I served with that I loved, that I ate a lot of meals with, and they held my kids and I held theirs. Some of them, that are no longer in this world, have passed on. And there's that grieving process when we think we're in discernment and we think that God has said something to us, and it just doesn't shake out the way we thought he had said, like what we thought he said. Now, with that, and that was the story that brought us here to Radiant Life. Mm-hmm. Now, fast forward 10 years that I've been here at this church, the second church in my life. Now I see, like you spoke of, it's like, oh man, I see your sovereignty, God. Mm-hmm. I see that you allowed really hard things and a change in what I thought you said, in order to teach me some things that I could never have learned through any other process. And now the blessings and the place of spaciousness that I live in, I could never be, it could not have happened without that. So the ends justify the means. I mean, you could say that. Yes, always with God. Always. Mm-hmm. Yeah. His ends always justify the means that he uses. But you said astutely a little bit ago, like, we don't always see that. Right. And we almost can't see it when in the midst of it. It's like you're not, until you get that in the rearview mirror a little bit, you're just like, I'm dying over here and I don't get this, God. Where are you? What are you doing? I thought you said this to me. Like, I thought this was your plan for my life and for my family. But now it's like, this plan's better.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is better. This is better than I could have ever imagined or dreamed. What you've done and the way that you've orchestrated things, it's amazing. So Yeah, I'm thankful for the process of discernment and hearing some things and thinking I hear things and then God doing something different. Let's continue on. 99, prudent money changers. I've got several things in this section. What about you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, bring it.
Like a money changer who became...
Yeah.
You got the same thing.
Yeah.
Intimately familiar with every aspect of a genuine coin, we must grow so familiar with God's voice that we can recognize a counterfeit and recognize it quickly. That's discernment. I wrote in the margin here, not just familiar with all the possible fakes. I think sometimes we instead of focusing just on Jesus' voice, just on God's voice, we can try to discern all of the non-Jesus voice or all non-God's voices, and we focus too much on what's not God's voice, what's not God's voice, and we spend so much time dealing with all the counterfeit stuff. Just like there's an infinite number of counterfeit types. There's an infinite number of counterfeit voices. We can't focus too much on those, or we lose focus on who the good shepherd is. Focus on the shepherd's voice. The more time we spend with that, the easier it will be to decipher. This is the Lord's voice. Nope, this is a fake.
What did Paul say? Did he say something like that we're supposed to be children according, like in our knowledge of evil?
Oh, yeah. Innocent as doves, shrewd as...
No, that's not the one.
Not the one.
There's another verse. I'm not thinking of it, but it's interesting. He talks about money changers because and listeners, viewers might know, like when they train people to identify counterfeits, they don't use counterfeit money.
Right.
They use real $100 bills. And you get to know that $100 bill so well, that is the standard, the gold standard, so to speak. You don't look at all the counterfeits. And man, you that's really an important point. The church, and we're in the midst of this right now with politics and just the partisanship and conspiracy stuff. I spent a lot of my Christian life like focusing on these conspiracy things that, man, unfortunately, lots of that stuff is probably true. But what am I going to do about it? What change, am I closer to Jesus knowing that?
But it distracts you, doesn't it? And that's what you get to. It distracts you from listening to the voice of the Good Shepherd.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, it's good. So my first real job was at Harding's at the Friendly Market. And I was a cashier.
Okay.
And so day in and day out, I'm handling cash. And a lot of people at this point in time still paid with cash. Yeah. And I was one day handed a counterfeit 20.
You knew it.
I knew it. And it was the strangest thing. It felt thicker. And the paper felt thicker. And it
almost used like construction paper.
Kind of from home, cut it out in his backyard
from Office Depot.
But it was a weird way to, it didn't feel like, it felt like it would tear easier. Like it was a thicker paper that would tear easier. And so it was a weird process saying that my manager took care of it. The guy didn't even know. The guy who had it.
It wasn't intentional.
No, he didn't have any others and that. I don't know how the whole thing ended out. But I found it and it was weird because I'd never felt counterfeit money. I had only ever felt the real stuff.
Right.
And so
because you're not a criminal.
Right. Yeah. As far as I'm not printing 20s in my basement. But it was weird because I'd spent so much time handling the real stuff that once it came instantly. No.
Yeah. And it was quickly. You quickly recognize it. That's good. Yeah. The last sentence of the next paragraph, it's a Thomas Green, a Jesuit priest, Thomas Green quote. The art of discernment is both central to the Christian life today and at the same time, not very well understood even by prayerful and committed Christians. Because I think a lot of it is we focus on those distractions, like you said, but more of it is about focusing too much on emotions and feelings, which we don't want to ignore. God comes to us through emotions and feelings, but there's got to be this balance, Even the next sentence, I've got this one underlined. Discernment is the gift and practice of attuning to God's voice amid the competing counterfeit noise. What does that look like for you? Like, how do you attune your ear to his voice? What's some things that you do to gain attunement?
One of the things that is really vital, and I'm going to offer this just probably if you take anything from this, take this piece. I have to attune myself daily, and it's before the noise of the world can really get me.
Timing is important then.
Timing is really important.
Talk more about that.
So I have 2 kids. I have a dog. I have a cell phone. Kids are 6 and 3. They're great. I love them. I'm married, got a wife. Wonderful. Cell phone. I don't have social media, but I do because I don't. You know what I mean? You're still getting everything. Notifications, phones are going off. So before any of that happens, before the kids wake up and all of a sudden all the needs are happening, I make a cup of coffee. I make a really, really, really good cup of coffee. And I have to sit there. Sometimes it's dark in the living room, my cup of coffee, and I just sit waiting for the voice of the Lord. I mean, that might sound strange if you've not practiced this before, but sitting in that silence, sitting in solitude, sitting in silence, and I listen for the voice of the Lord. I don't usually start my prayer. I don't start my prayer times by talking. I start by listening and waiting, because I've noticed if I start by talking, I talk too much.
We get to the asking quick.
God. Yeah.
We get to the asking God.
Yep. I think about my schedule for the day. I think about stuff going on.
Do this
to-do
for me,
lists.
God.
Yeah. Oh man. And it's so much more about what can you do for me versus connecting. And so I have to tune in. And if I start by listening for his voice in the morning, it sounds weird, but I can remember what that sounds like as the noises of the day begin to pop up, because they pop up quickly. And before I know it, there's a million voices. There's stuff to do. There's notifications from the phone.
Decisions you have to make.
Stuff that I've got to do that is always coming at me. And if I don't remember what that still small voice sounds like, I'll be tossed by the waves, tossed by the winds and waves.
So silence and solitude in the morning for you is a way to fill up the tank of discernment for the day. So you are equipped now because you've heard the voice. Now you can hear it more clearly later on.
Yes. Yeah. I like the way you use that, filling the tank up. So I don't just do it in the mornings. So let me say that's kind of my, you got to top off before you go. I do when I drive. When I leave, I don't play music. Usually I take my daughter, drop her off at daycare. She goes to school. And then when I leave there's no music. And it's a 12 to 15 minute drive from there, depending on how heavy the foot is. Silence. And it's fun because those are the moments where I have conversations with God in my head. Those are the times where he's bringing people to mind. And in those moments, sometimes I'll pray for them. Sometimes it'll remind me when I get to work, send a message. If there's a phone call and I'm supposed to make, or something I'm supposed to do, a touch point, a contact thing. But if I don't spend that time listening, I don't do it when I get here.
Yeah.
When I get in the office, because there's stuff to happen. When you get here and get going. And so constantly throughout the day, I try to find those pockets of time, we'll call them, as short as 30 seconds, 45 seconds. Just, Lord, and what it does, it fills that tank a little bit more. I like that terminology
Top
more.
you off a little bit.
Yeah. Pull me back to, okay, I want to remember what your voice is, because if I'm not intentional, I'll be honest, I'll forget.
Yeah.
If I'm not really intentional with those moments. And sometimes, like I used to set alarms on my watch, and then I lost it for a while and forgot to restart it. But I would set alarms every hour, just that would buzz, and it would remind me, pause for 30 seconds, pause for a minute. Yeah. Lord, help me to hear your voice.
Listeners, viewers, what Ryan just described is, going back to Ignatius of Loyola, is the daily examen. It's a quasi-examen. And there are 5 offices, or what we would understand to be times or appointments during the day, where there are these intentional connections with God. Pete Scazzaro talks about, he has a discipline of 3 offices per day. So the morning connection with God that you've described, Ryan, and then a midday, and then an end of day. And that's where the examen comes in at the end of the day, where you're kind of looking back through the film of the day and saying, okay, here's where I sensed the goodness and the peace of God. And here's where I was stirred up with desolation, where I was maybe in the flesh, or someone around me was in the flesh. And this is how it made me feel. And then you bring those things to God and you go to sleep with a clear and peaceful mind. So the offices are a powerful way to gain attunement to God, definitely. How could it not be? Because when we spend time with someone, we get to know them better.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I've known my wife since she was 17 years old. I've known with her, and I've been married to her longer than I've not. If you can.
Oh yeah. Married to her longer than she wasn't married to you.
Yes.
Right.
And you get to know a person when you've spent time with them. You get to understand their ways, And And it's much the same with God. When we spend that time with him, we grow. We grow and like, yep, that's the voice of God, or nope, I don't think it is,
And maybe that's a little bit of encouragement for anyone who's listening, thinking this is so hard. Because let me level with you. It starts off really difficult.
Yes.
It can be hard to like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Yeah. But it does get easier. Let that be a little encouragement. The more you practice the discernment and listening to the Spirit of God, the easier it becomes to identify his voice amid the myriad of other conflicting voices that are happening in the world. It does get easier the longer you practice it, just like anything else we practice in life. Yeah. Over time, over effort put into this, he will come true on that. It does become easier.
Yeah. Imagine if I was Mormon, Ryan, and Lisa was just one of, let's say 10 wives that I had. So I've got her voice and then 9 other voices that I'm trying to get to know and learn over a period of however many years that I've been married to Lisa. How well would I know each of them?
About a tenth is good.
A tenth is good. Yeah. And so Ryan said on something really important. Another really important part of discernment is actually abstaining and removing other voices. It's to say, look, the TV is a voice.
Yep.
Social media is a voice. My own voice is a voice.
Yep.
My wife's voice is a voice, right? The newspaper, whatever your flavor is, there are a lot of competing voices in the world. And in order to have discernment that comes from God, there are going to be times we have to block and remove those other voices just to focus on him. Yeah. And I love what you've said about silence and solitude. I have the same discipline. Coffee first, and then I sit down in quiet. And I say nothing, I do nothing. I have some centering prayers that I will say, because when I first start that process of silence and solitude, you can imagine these 1,000 voices. And for me, a big part of that is I actually have a paper journal right there. And so when some of those things pop into my head, rather than trying to keep them in my head, which is a voice, and distract me from what I'm hoping to hear from God, I just quickly jot that down and I put the pen down. Oh, don't forget to pay that bill. Don't forget to email Ryan Lutz. Don't forget, you know what I mean? I just put those things down. Now that voice is silenced and I don't have to carry that anymore. Okay, Lord, I'm coming back to you. And my prayer in that moment in the morning is, Jesus, I'm here to spend time with you. Yep. Jesus, I'm here to spend time with you. I just keep saying that to him. That's what I'm here for. The chaos starts slowly calming down, and you begin to hear his voice. And then I will go into more liturgical prayers and other things like that. But it does help to stop and slow down and listen to get better at discernment. Yeah. It really does.
Yeah.
Page 100, God's Whisper into 101. What's sticking out to you?
What you got? I got something on 101.
Yeah, same. 101. You start.
My point is that even on the pages of the Bible, God's native language is a whisper, and a whisper is hard to hear and easy to ignore. What if God is speaking to you far more than you realize? I'll pause there for a minute. He's talking about, specifically with Elijah, but in hearing God's voice. We look for it in the winds, we look for it in the miracles, we look for it in the powerful moments of life, but all too often God speaks in those still small whispers. And so it's almost putting on these spiritual blinders and not losing focus on that still small voice when everything, all the chaos around is loud. And sometimes it can look, hey, this looks really great. This looks really good. God must be in the middle of this. Yeah. Wow. It must be in the middle. Like, wait a minute. That has nothing to do with God's mission here on earth. It's not bringing peace. In fact, it's bringing dissension. It's causing divisiveness. Refocus on where the Spirit of God is. And so that, all through scriptures we read that. And I like how he kind of connects it a little bit more, but maybe that question was kind of convicting. Maybe God's speaking more than we realize.
Yeah. I have that same thing highlighted and then into 102.
Yeah, keep going.
Same. So what if the majority of divine instructions or encounters in your life to date are missed connections, magic moments that could have been, but the Lord passed right by you? We tend to miss God in our midst, not because he's too extraordinary, but because he's too ordinary. We tend to look for God in the wind, earthquake, and fire rather than the whisper. We climb our own Mount Horebs with expectation when that preacher speaks, when I attend this conference or worship experience, when I go on my upcoming silent retreat, pigeonholing God's voice into special times and places. But all the while, he's about to pass by. What if you could know him, not just at the table in the evening, but all the way along the road to Emmaus? What if you could hear him not just on top of Mount Horeb, but in the valley of suffering? Pete Greig writes, if we are ever to feel fully safe and truly loved by the Lord of all the earth, we must eventually, like Elijah on Horeb and that couple on the Emmaus road, learn to listen for his voice in the anticlimax of life's non-events. This is the definition of spiritual direction. Spiritual direction is the process of coming to know that God is speaking to you always and in everything. If you will, Luke 7 is just like this place I'm living right now. You know, if you knock, he opens. If you ask, he answers. If you seek him, you're going to find him. If we as people will think and believe that Jesus is in all things and I can hear from him anywhere at any time, you will. And he is speaking. And that's part of the job of a spiritual director, is to listen to a person. If I was with you in a meeting, to listen to you and listen to the things you're saying and just say, I see the fingerprints of God on that, man. God is speaking to you. You are hearing from Jesus, man. That is God. That is not in your head. That is not another person's voice. Jesus is present in you, and he's speaking to you. And discernment is believing that. It's knowing that God is speaking to us. He is. Am I going to open my eyes and my ears and my heart and listen to him? And then obey it. I'm going to do something about it. I thought of Brother Lawrence when I read that section.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Brother Lawrence was a dishwasher. He's a monk in a monastery. And he wrote a book called Practicing the Presence of God, little book. Really, listeners, viewers, read it.
Really good book.
Worth your time.
Super short.
But he has this saying that is probably the crux of the whole book. And I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but he said, I can as much experience the presence of God in the kitchen washing dishes as at the Eucharistic table.
That's a huge statement for
It's a
Catholic
huge
monk.
statement.
Yeah.
The actual body and blood of Christ at the table of Thanksgiving, which is what Eucharist is. I can experience that same thing while I'm washing dishes. There's no Holy Eucharist there. There's no sacrament. So dishwashing becomes sacramental.
Yeah.
Everything becomes sacramental. All things become holy. Now, we do know there are holy things in the church. There are holy things that are in the community of the body of believers, and they're holy, all of that. But holiness can be anywhere and everywhere.
Right.
If we're open to it, and discernment begins to open our eyes to that truth. I think sometimes we make it too difficult.
Yeah. We put a lot of red tape around it and try to.
Good.
Yeah.
That's
try to define
red
it differently.
tape. Yeah. That's a great way to put it. We want to put God in this box, and limit him. Oh, there's no way that God could speak to me through this thing, whatever, And there's a lot of critique. There's a lot of criticism. A lot of the voice of the church, if you notice, is that red tape.
That's true. Ouch.
It's a lot of the barking of, you didn't hear God there.
Yeah.
Your way and your thing that you do with God, God's not in that. He can't be in that. You're wrong. And man, would to God that we would start peeling up the red tape and just let God be God to people and let him speak to them. If you see a person who's talking, acting, sounding, and behaving more like Jesus, the red tape's gone, man.
Yeah. That's
the purpose. Yeah. Stop questioning all these things and look for the presence of Jesus in a person's life. If you see Jesus in a person's life, they're doing something right.
Right.
Ooh, I don't know what it is. It may not be for me. It may not be for you, but man, discernment should show us. It's like, Jesus is who I'm looking for. when I can hear him and be close to him in and through a person or a practice, that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. You'll know them by their fruit. You judge them by the fruit. If it's good fruit, it's good. If it's good fruit, it's good.
That's right.
You don't have to think about it.
And what you're pointing at there is we kind of built that pyramid, if you will, of the theology is the base, and then we've got the methodology, and we got practice kind of there at the top that we talked about. Yeah. We've skipped over the theology. We're pointing out a method, and we want to grab the method or point at the method and say that must be wrong. Where really we need to look at the theology. Is That's the theology good. Proper? If the theology is proper and the method comes out of the theology, then the method's not wrong or improper. Maybe God's using that for that individual. Yeah. Just like the way that, we have similar practices in our even in our quiet times. Mm-hmm. I don't use a lot of liturgical prayer in my quiet times. Yeah. You do. Now, just because you use something that others may use as well the same morning, does that mean God speaks through that and not through my prayer that I might write that's different or might pray this? No. Exactly. God's going to use that and speak through those differently. And sometimes we have to structure it or we and if he doesn't work through this, it's not God. No. Yep. We've tried to confine him too much. I agree with you.
I believe that. 102 into 103. This
whole
chapter,
section to me, this is massive. Yeah.
Why doesn't God yell?
Oh,
That's
boy.
The heading. So what's sticking out to you? I've got something from 102 to 103, but if you have something at the top there.
A lot of those. I think there's two that stuck out to me. The first one's in the first paragraph at the end there, because when God does speak in the most obvious, undeniable ways, it's relatively ineffective. I read that, and then I had to reread it like 3 or 4 times and think, wait a minute,
what was he saying to you?
What in the world is he, how? Elijah's fire spectacle didn't seem to do much good. Calling down fire from heaven. Mm-hmm. And the other priests that were there that were for Baal, they were all calling this, nothing happened. They ran in fear, but then Elijah now's most wanted. Yeah. He's hunted his life. Hunt. Like, oh, that's true. Okay, yeah, he's hunted to kill. The next one, Jesus' miracles seemed only subjectively effective, meaning it was up to the eyes and the ears of the onlookers in the crowd to recognize God's activity in the miracles rather than explain them away. Very true. We can see that all throughout Scripture. Wait a minute. God's speaking obvious. How do people not realize it? Well, because they don't want to see it.
Yeah.
Obvious. Okay. Even the same thing, empty tomb. There were rumors that went around afterwards that the disciples stole the body. So, you're exactly right. God doesn't yell because it's been ineffective. That I've never thought that before. I've never wondered why doesn't he speak loud? So that was a revelation for me. It might seem simple, but that really, that's true. Why doesn't God?
I think that's big.
It's ineffective. I wish God was louder. Well, he has been. It doesn't work. Yeah. It doesn't work because there's so many other loud competing voices, and sometimes we're not ready for his holiness. I really don't think we are.
Yeah,
I think we see it and it scares us. And it did multiple times. So if we're not ready for it, he's not going to speak that way. That's a bad teacher, and he's not a bad teacher. He's a good teacher. Yeah.
And if it's loud, we're going to take credit for it some way. I feel like we're gonna, we're gonna link arms to that because we're loud. We can be loud.
Yeah.
That still small voice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you go.
Next paragraph kind of going in out of 102 into 103. So maybe God whispers not because he's evasive, but because he's intimate. Mm-hmm. Because the louder his voice gets, the more polarizing he becomes. Some want to make use of his power for their vision, like the disciples who planned the size and location of their thrones in his kingdom. And others want to dismiss his power to hold on to the illusion of their control, like the priests who had so much prestige to surrender if Jesus was really king. Maybe God whispers because it's the only way he can get what he wants most. What was lost in Eden, to walk with you, with me, in familiar intimacy, that we might know God as he truly is and discover ourselves as we truly are in his presence. Man, that's a powerful one. To think about it really.
I appreciate that he wrote this out. Not evasive, he's intimate. Mm-hmm. The most formative conversations I've ever had in life are this volume.
Yeah.
I've had loud conversations. I'm not a yeller, but I've had loud conversations.
Sure.
That are much higher volume. Those don't seem to be as formative.
Don't go well.
Those don't usually go well. Usually not for me. Yeah.
No, same.
God he's intimate, and especially the way Holy Spirit speaks, he wants that. And if we raise our voice, our ears turn down. You realize that? If we're yelling, our body has a response, a physical response. When we yell, there's something that happens with the blood flow in our ears, and I can't remember how it all works, but it actually allows us to hear less because we're yelling, and it's our brain trying to protect itself.
To reduce volume?
Or our ears, to reduce the volume.
Wow,
so if our voices, so if our voices go up, it's harder for us to hear well. So I wonder if maybe some of this, God knows how we're made.
Yeah.
If we are lowering our voice, if the sound around is quiet, our ears are actually able to hear better than if we were to raise our voice or if he was to raise his, because he's a lot louder than we are. And I love that last sentence. Maybe he whispers because it's only the way he can get what he wants most, what was lost in Eden. He wants that intimate walk with us.
Yeah.
And if we're loud, we're boisterous, and we're not focused on him, we're not going to get to that point in our walk. We truly won't know him as he is.
Yeah. Let's go through one more section. So 103 to 104.
Sure.
The deceiver's weeds. What's sticking out to you there?
Great parable. Love the parable. In the middle of the second paragraph there, your inner world is naturally a rowdy room filled with competing voices. Ouch, that's really true. The voice of God is active and present in your inner life, but there are other voices vying for your attention too. One of the reasons it's difficult to hear God's voice is because he's got a lot of competition. It's harder to hear a whisper amid all that noise. And that's that now, not out of this, but that's why I slow down and try to cut a lot of that noise out in the morning when it's naturally more quiet. There are fewer, not none, but there are fewer voices to compete with in the morning. That's why I don't turn the TV on. When I use a Bible, I use my Bible. I don't use my phone. Nothing wrong with that. If that's what you have, there's nothing wrong. But for my time, I know if I'm on my phone, there's other stuff that's on my phone.
Yeah, it's a receptacle for other things.
It is. And it will immediately draw my attention away. It's other voices that pull. So I have to have paper. There's nothing else. I don't because the voices are loud. And even in my own head, those voices are loud, and it's
enough to deal with.
Absolutely.
My head is enough.
Absolutely.
I don't need the voice coming through the phone.
I got too many different ones in there as it is. So just slowing to listen to the Spirit of God. And so, there's other voices. How do we push those away? So
the whisper and the shout thing and what you described about the blood flow, it makes me think of limits and bandwidth, right? The reason God has to speak to us in these ways is because we are limited. We actually can't. Yeah, if you're in a room and there's all that shouting going on, and someone's right in front of you, you can't hear what they're saying. It's because all of that. We don't have the capacity to be in the midst of all that shouting and hear that still small voice. We're limited. And sometimes I think we want to push through that limitation. Oh, I can do that. Yeah, I can check my phone first. It'll be fine. I can just clear that inbox real quick. I can hear you while everyone else is screaming around me. And God's saying, no, you really can't. I've made you with limits. There's a certain threshold that you have to live within. And when you don't, you're not hearing my voice. You're hearing a flavor of it. You're hearing it mixed with something else. Yes, silence and solitude, a powerful component. I think listeners, viewers, if you've listened, I think what God's been saying to Ryan and I both in this podcast, and maybe to you, hopefully, is that silence and solitude is a really, really big part of discernment.
Yeah.
And quiet is a big part of discernment.
Yep.
Because in the quiet, you can actually listen. You can actually listen to him. What else on 103 and 104? I've got that the whole next page.
Yeah, go ahead.
The bottom sentence, to ignore the role of the devil who sows weeds in the night is to attempt to bring about a rich harvest from my inner life without cultivating the soil. To obsess over the devil, blaming our spiritual enemy for every stubbed toe and twist of fate, is to ignore the flesh and the world. Again, attempting to bring about a rich harvest from my inner life without cultivating the soil. Rather than ignoring or obsessing over the devil, we should test the spirits to see whether they are from God, in the words of the Apostle John. Because the inner life of the believer is like the field that contains both God's wheat and the enemy's weeds, the process of hearing and keeping in step with the Spirit involves attentiveness to the inner dynamics and movements of the soul. The Spirit's whisper is directed at the soul's depths, while the deceiver's lies appeal to the shallow waters of the ego. Just kind of, it's a little bit more finely said, but what we've been saying is that these competing voices, there's just so much that's been, I think, that is in this book about discernment. And we have so much more. We're going to pick up.
There's plenty more.
We're going to pick up on page
maybe.
104 and finish this conversation on discernment. Yeah, I'm looking through. There's so much more to the end of this chapter. We better just pause here. We hope you guys have been encouraged in thinking about discernment, this gift of the Spirit. If you don't have this gift, anybody can have discernment, and you can be given discernment from God. There is a particular gift of discernment, which we'll talk about later, but just begin to ask God, okay, maybe Ryan and Josh have a point. Maybe Tyler has a point. Maybe silence and solitude and quiet needs to become a more regular part of my life. Maybe shutting down some of the other voices needs to be part of my life in order to hear from God. Because I some of you are saying, because discernment's the process of hearing from God.
Yep.
It's hearing from God. I don't hear from God. Maybe it's because you're hearing from too many other things. Maybe because you're talking too much. Maybe because you're not quiet enough. Because God's there and he wants to speak to you. That's a guarantee and a promise. We kind of have to throw the right ingredients into the pot in order for that to come to the surface. We have to God wants this cooperative relationship with us. He's not a genie. He's not going to just sprinkle Jesus dust on us and just change and make us different. He does sometimes. It's very, very rare. Most of the time, he'll say something, we do something. He says something, we do something. He says something, we do something. He does something, we follow. Like, there's all of these interactions, but it's going to require choices on your part. So we want to encourage you, like and subscribe to this podcast, Radiant Reflections. Push this out. Share this on social media. Share this with friends or family. Share this book. Encourage your friends and family to buy this book and read this book as we continue talking about the gifts of the Spirit. We want to thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.